All right, good to see you guys. Hope everybody's doing well. Again, we should have a few more people coming in. I'm just kind of getting warmed up here. Um, if you guys were here last week, or if you checked out our YouTube channel, we did post last week. We did post a whole bunch of ideas on the future of UX design. The idea was to review various technologies that you might include in your portfolio. So you probably already have a portfolio, you probably have a few pieces on the ground, and you might want to add a few new pieces, or might want to add some new case studies. So that's kind of stuff we're talking about. Today, we want to talk a little bit about how to grow your following, right? So grow yourself or grow your footprint on the web so that some of the HR managers might find you. So welcome, welcome. I'm going to share my screen in a bit, and we're just going to kind of go over some notes. Obviously, if you guys want to give me some insight, go, lift up your hand, go nuts. But yeah, this is just a lot of ideas that you might be thinking about over the next few days or the next few weeks as you flesh out your portfolio. Let's jump in. I'm just going to share my screen for a second. All right, so number 7, as we said here, this is about finding clients. The idea here is I want to find some clients. I want to build up my footprint online. I'm probably going to be using a lot of social media, so that might be the first place to start. Let's jump in here. So the notion here is I want to find my tribe. And if I'm a UX designer, I'm probably going to be talking to a lot of people who are UX researchers or UI designers, or maybe project managers or front-end developers. These are all kind of like the tentacles that I have around me. And it might involve the kind of meetups that you go to, or some of the events, kind of IRL live events that you go to in the future. In some cases you might fit in, you might meet a whole bunch of people. In some cases you might find that the vibe doesn't quite suit you, but that's all right. We'll give it a whirl. So the notion here is I want to find my tribe. I want to publish. I want to try to find some cool stuff that I can publish online to try to get attention from some of the HR managers. In many cases, it just matters that you have consistent publishing. So if you go on Twitter or IG and I see a whole bunch of your work, I see 10 to 20 of your recent work, or some of your recent sort of fun works that you did on the weekend, for example. That's really all they're looking for. They're looking for passion. Now, very often when you find something online or you share stuff, again, it's not really common with UX design, but now and then you might actually meet some haters. And again, I just say this because this is the internet, right? We always say that IG, Twitter, parts of Facebook, they're there. It's kind of annoying. And the reason why it's annoying is not because some people are negative or even giving you feedback. It's negative because some people might find it discouraging, right? Discouraging. They say, you know what? I don't really like this website, or I don't really like to post. I'm just going to stop posting altogether. And it's really, really heartbreaking when you find that. So let's talk a little bit about haters, right? We don't want you to stop sharing. We want you to kind of build. So yeah, the notion of haters are pretty simple, right? These are people who are not necessarily on their path. They're not necessarily on their mission, and they kind of look around and they see all these people doing cool stuff, and they figure if they can knock somebody down a few pegs, then relatively, they're pretty successful, right? It's kind of the way they see the world. Rather than pushing forward, they just try to bring the world down around them so they feel better. And here's what I want you to try to do to ignore them. It's real simple. It's like one little rule of thumb, right? If they offer value to you, great. Try to absorb it, embrace it, learn it. It's almost like having a mentor, right? So think of it like possibly it could be a mentor. Great. As I said here, they're on your tribe. So if somebody is just giving you feedback, or somebody's giving you critical feedback of your work, great. Call yourself a junior designer, whatever you want to do, right? But if somebody is actually offending you or saying something about you personally in any such way, use the power that you do have. Block them and just delete them from existence, right? Cancel them in your own way. So just say, okay, delete their comment, block them, and you never have to hear them again. I'm sorry that you have to do this, and I'm sorry that you have to kind of go through this experience, but over time, you're just kind of got to build up a thicker skin, and you'll just have a quick policy, like a one-time policy. If somebody offends me, boom, they're gone, right? And again, give people a chance to give you critical feedback, and don't be, don't be critical of them. Just try to be critical of people who are offensive to you personally. All right. So this is a kind of like a new pattern, and you can see down on the bottom right here, this is a book probably from about 10 years ago called Tribes. Seth Godin is a terrific writer, and he's the one who kind of set out to develop this notion, like find your tribe, find 100 or 1,000 people who love you, and you'll never have to sell again, because these people will buy anything and they'll follow you, no matter what you do. So in a new perspective here would be to share things online. Obviously, there may be haters, delete and block them. But on the upside, because you're reaching out, because you're constantly producing, you're randomly sort of exposing yourself to great people who could be project managers, front-end developers, UI, UX people, CEOs who want to build up a startup and they're looking for a creative director, that kind of thing, right? So enjoy the process, enjoy the benefits. Don't just focus on the negatives of being, active online. Now, another book that I want to kind of show you or kind of think about is the notion of sharing your work in general. And again, let's just start off real quick. If you start working for real clients, very quickly you're going to be signing an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, right? And it's pretty simple, right? They're hiring you, therefore they own that work, and they don't want you to be sort of sharing it publicly. Because it's their secret project. So you need to be able to kind of do stuff on Saturdays or on Sundays that is your own work. That's the goal. Can you come up with consistent, interesting work that is outside of your client work? Then you're doing great. All right. Again, one of the notions here we talked about was, how do you interact with people online, right? See if you can go a step further than just liking somebody's work or saying really cool or something like that. See if you can actually interact with them and give value to them, ask them questions, sort of do little mini interviews within places like Twitter and Instagram, and try to build up communication, because ultimately that's what you're building, right? You're building a relationship. Now, one of the really cool projects that I've come across over the past few years is this 100 days course. Now, for you guys are obviously UX designers. The first place that you might look is 100 days of UI. 100 days of UI, if you look it up on Google, it'll take you to a website. You enter your Gmail or your email address, and every day they're going to send you one prompt. And the way it works is you get a prompt, and you can jump into Figma and you can kind of mock something up, right? This is practicing UI design. And every day you get another email and they give you another prompt. And obviously over time, the prompts are going to kind of evolve and they're going to get more complex. And eventually you're going to be building incredible things based off your experience. So, after 30 days, 60 days, 100 days, you'll have this library of amazing work. That's 3 months, over 3 months of interesting work that you can share publicly, right? Can you share it on Twitter? Yes. Instagram, LinkedIn, go crazy, right? So there's a part of you that's going to say, okay, I'll share my work, but only if it's really amazing, right? So this is the internal battle that you are facing. Is as soon as you create something, you feel like, okay, now it's going to get criticized, right? So that's the job, right? That's the job. We want to be publishing stuff on a regular basis to start reaching interested people or interested, employers. So again, try to do battle with your ego and say, I'm going to put my ego aside. I'm just going to do this work. I'm not going to have an attitude about it. And over time, I'm going to be building incredible stuff. And really smart people are going to be reaching out or going to be talking to me and following me. Now, after you do your 100 days, you can just keep going forever and ever and ever. There are always amazing things that you can learn. As I mentioned here, 100 days of code. Another one is Blender. You've probably heard of Blender. It's like a 3D illustration tool. You could probably get it for free. Really interesting stuff. 100 days of animation. And again, you guys have seen this work. You guys have seen this work all over LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, where people create beautiful work and you're like, that's kind of weird. They're working at Facebook and they're creating this for fun. So you can do the exact same thing. Create this stuff for fun, and eventually more and more people will be following you, and eventually you will have clients following you or potential employers following you. And again, I riffed on a few of these, but ultimately it's really just comes down to you, right? If you can find prompts, you can create work. And again, if it's UI design, use your imagination, use some of the trends that you know in the industry, and build off them. So this is like a recipe for the next year of work that you can put through your social media. This is an example, probably one of the best examples I've ever seen of somebody who's using their free time to learn a skill and build their career. So this is Tian Tian. You can see that she was learning Blender. So she was learning how to do sort of 3D illustrations within Blender. And now it's called 100 Days of UI. Does that mean that you have to do something every single day? No, you don't. If you only want to do it on Saturdays and Sundays, so what? So you do 2 a week, something like that, right? If you go at your own pace. I know people are busy enough as it is with work and personal issues. Okay, so do what you can. Maybe you do it only once a week, so be it, right? But this is what people are doing. And Tian Tian, again, I think she was working at Uber at the time. And in her free time, she would build up these beautiful illustrations. And guess what, guys? She was learning how to use the tool. That's the whole point. It's not 100 days of showing off. It's 100 days to learn how to use the tool. So all of these are just educational opportunities that also double as terrific content online. Consistent posting, obviously, you don't have to do it every single day. It would be great if you did. Obviously, we know about Beeple. He's the one who sold that huge NFT for like $60 million or whatever. I think he posted every single day, but look, do what you got to do. If you don't have time, don't worry about it. But yeah, posting once a week, I think would be the minimum. Again, here's an example of people doing in Twitter. And one of the things they came up with was they said, this really amazing photo that I did, or this amazing painting that I did. Well, here's my work in progress sketches that went along with it, right? And you can see this is actually something that people care about because they're trying to understand how you do what you do. So you get retweets, you get comments, like you get that kind of reaction from fans. It's just kind of putting your heart into your content, like knowing that, look, I made a few mistakes and then I got to this final outcome. So can you get the progress? Can you get the kind of like the media at the very beginning of the project? Can you share that? Of course you can. Now, another one is obviously Austin Kleon was the author of this book, Show Your Work. And actually, Gary Vaynerchuk, was probably 2 or 3 years ago, came up with this notion where he said, document, what was he said? Document, don't create, or something like that. And what he meant was your work is actually documenting your life. And I thought that was such an interesting way of viewing his social media, right? It's like, it's to beat up on this idea of perfectionism. And Austin Kleon has it right in his book, right? He says, like, document your life. That is your job. And so find ways in which you can kind of integrate your UI design or your UX design or the interviews that you do. Find ways to kind of document it or take photos of it or write about it, write about what you're thinking in a Facebook post. Do it, right? This is the kind of things that people really appreciate reading. Whereas, perfectionism, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of hard to relate to, it's not real. So yeah, this is your side hustle. So do it on a Saturday or a Sunday or in your free time. And I said here, can you make it 30 minutes or an hour? Then you can do it every single day. But if it's something that's going to take you 6 hours to get it just right, well, you'll probably never publish it. This is my part 2, and it was comments about, well, I don't really have a project that I can share. I have an NDA, so I can't really share that. Here's the answer. You can join a hackathon. Designers are definitely welcome at hackathons around the world. You can just take a screenshot of this to take down all the URLs. Look them up. Obviously, everybody's locked down these days, but yes, you can join them remotely. You can work on a project with people around the world, meet interesting people, and yes, put your amazing work in your portfolio. So you got no excuses. You know, every project needs a brilliant designer. All right. Yeah, as I said, the last one is, you know, ultimately, if you work on an amazing project, all you have to do is just have a sit down with the conversation with the client, and you know, say to them at the end, you know, after the first phase is finished and things go public, you know, the website is up, you know, have a little sit down with the client and say, like, you know, what parts can we talk about? What parts can we share on our website? And just give the client all the power they want, right? If they say you can share these 3 images and that's it, well, so be it, right? But just make sure you have that conversation. Don't assume that the client is going to say no to everything, because that's kind of a very destructive way of seeing the world. I'm sure your clients will let you add various components of the project to show off in your portfolio. All right, so here's some examples. We want to go through examples of social media, and I've already shown you one that was a Twitter post, but really, you know, we go nuts. We have tons of social media examples. Some are sort of flat, some are video. Let's check it out. So as I said, a rule of thumb here is try to turn this into a hobby, right? If you're not working right now, all of your time can be spent building up this content and sharing it online. This can kind of be like your number one. I would probably say your number one habit or your number one policy would be to build a very basic portfolio website firstly, and then number 2 would just be start filling it up with incredible content. And yeah, we'll just go for volume. If you consider yourself a junior designer with not very much experience, just call yourself a junior designer and just fill it up with as much stuff. And maybe down the line in 3 months or 6 months, you can delete stuff that you think isn't that great. As your work improves, the quality improves, you can delete things you think aren't really that relevant. No worries. So I made a little note there and I said, is it useful or interesting? So I think that the amount of insight that you share, if you share like a mock-up for an interesting app that you think should exist, you know, your description of the app or maybe your understanding of users, those are all really, really valuable insights that I think make it very useful to anybody who's just scrolling through. Whereas if you just mock something up like, hey, I redesigned Twitter, you know, you just got to have some insight behind it, right? And if you do so, I think it'll be really relevant. So here's somebody who's sharing either on LinkedIn. So here's one who is a illustrator, and they said, "Hey, I mocked up this breakfast that I made. It's like whatever, avocado toast." And somebody on the right here, they said, I think they're just mocking up with like an old retro video game would look like. Oh, intro scene VR arcade machine. So these are just brilliant ideas, and somebody's just mocking them up, and they're saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did it like this? Like, that's kind of the attitude, and allows for really interesting people to jump into the conversation and say, wow, cool idea, retweet it, comment on it, share. You know, these are all just brilliant. And again, the Henry Wong example on the left, how long did it take him to sketch that? Probably 20 or 30 minutes, maybe. You know, it doesn't take him very long. He enjoys doing it, which is important. That's like the foundation of a good hobby. And he posts it online and people think it's brilliant, right? So what's stopping him for doing that 365 days a year? You know, it's a fantastic, he's enjoying it, it's interesting. And of course, his network keeps growing and growing and growing. And again, we can do that on pretty much any social media. As I said, this is a little insider tip. You might have heard this before. One of the first places that you can start looking if you want to be hired by a great company on LinkedIn is to just go and look at your first connections. Go look at your network right now and just look for your first connections. So these are people who you actually know, as opposed to the second or third connections. And the idea is like, just look for the companies that your friends work at and say, oh, I know somebody who works at Microsoft. And like, do you want to work at Microsoft? Hit them up and sort of, pick their brains a little bit and say like, what is it? What do I have to do to get a job as a junior designer at Microsoft? Like, what do I have to do? What does it take? What kind of interviews do they have at Microsoft? This is like probably the number one place to look for a job. And the reason is because people want to hire their friends, right? You probably have, if you go back to when you were in high school, you probably had jobs that you got because of your parents, right? Your parents or your parents' friends, they hired you for summer work and that kind of thing. Like, the truth is that just continues as you get older throughout your life. People want to work with their friends, right? It's old news. So hit up your first connections in LinkedIn. Maybe spend the next week emailing people, just a friendly introduction or a friendly comment, and nothing too crazy, and see what you can find. Maybe they find some really amazing companies that are just right at your doorstep. So good luck. All right, so let's jump over to Facebook. And again, I know Facebook is actually where most of your friends are as opposed to LinkedIn. But Facebook, it's a little weird to be sort of wondering where people work. Anyway, you could probably do the same thing on Facebook, but we'll see. Let's just jump in here. Here's an example of people who have actually joined various groups. For example, in addition to your actual personal feed, you can actually join things like UX design groups or project groups or technology groups, and you can start posting there on the regular. Like, as long as you're not selling anything, this is content, right? If you're selling something, it's kind of like, hey, this is an ad. But as long as you're just posting interesting content, there's no reason that anybody should stop you. Like, look what these guys are doing. Like, they're posting on Facebook and they're saying, hey, like my stuff? Check out my Instagram. Oh, you can check my ArtStation account. It's got all my best work. Like, it's not really that offensive. It's literally just saying, here's some cool stuff that I made. If you like it, whatever, hit me up, follow me, or whatever, right? It's pretty easy going, and obviously it's really easy to kind of reuse content across various social media. Again, Instagram, it's the same thing, right? Something that's beautiful, and you'll notice on the right side, this is a kind of carousel. You probably heard that term before, something that allows you kind of swipe through from left to right. So for example, at the bottom, you can see my little mouse cursor. These little dots, right? This implies that there's several cards. You've probably seen these all over the place. I've heard that these are really taking off on Instagram, or have in the last couple of years. So if you wanted to string like 9 different illustrations together, or 9, like, if I was to take an app and it had 9 different screens, all together, it would kind of walk you through the entire app. So this kind of content is usually a lot more interesting to people than just one screen. So think about how you might combine some of your work, or you might go from a basic wireframe and then eventually the color, and then finally you can show like images or photo, or like it's going to say video of a click-through wireframe or something like that. This would be just a tremendously creative way to show your work and how it evolves from the very beginning to the final version. What else we got here? Twitter, again, we've seen this before. It's pretty simple. As I actually personally think that Twitter seems to have, I don't know, Twitter seems to have a little bit more hate. Obviously, Twitter is fantastic, but it seems to have this anonymity to it, which allows people to be haters. But it's the same thing. If somebody's annoying you, you can block them, delete them, there you go. But Twitter itself is absolutely relevant, and it's alive. I was just gonna go back here for a second. So as you say here, day 75 of 100 days of code, okay? So again, if you guys aren't into code, don't worry about it. But there's tons and tons of people who are doing this live, right? They're just creating all this amazing content, and you say, here's day 36, here's day 99. That's what they're doing, right? It's their one little thing. Now, if I could get Osaro to create that exact same content on 5 different platforms, you can actually just see his social impact grow over time. And the last one I would mention here is video. Obviously, TikTok and Reels are key video sharing apps. See what you can do, right? It's kind of funny with digital creators, we're like, oh, I can't really show you my wireframes, but look, these guys are doing the same thing. They're trying their best. Obviously, these guys are showing like, how do you combine colors, or here's an easy way to build wireframes, or they're actually educational, and that's why designers follow them. So eventually designers follow you, and then project managers follow you, and so on it goes. So if you don't have a TikTok account, go for it. And the last thing here I'd mention is, if you have all this stuff, maybe once a week, you can just go online and just check your numbers, right? And say, how many followers do I have? The other thing that you'll note here is that I just kind of made a little account saying, how much content did I publish this week? I just want to kind of remind myself that I want to be publishing every week. That's it. If I go for 2 weeks or 3 weeks where I haven't posted anything, well, then it's all my fault, right? Because I'm not really producing enough content. So again, Meetup, if you have one, but YouTube and thereon and LinkedIn and so forth, this is fantastic. And again, you can watch your numbers just tick up every week. You get 1 or 2 followers every week, and before you know it, you got 500, you got 1,000. So this is a really interesting way to build up your social impact. Obviously, I mentioned building your portfolio. Many of you probably already have a portfolio, but if you don't, obviously WordPress would be the easiest way to go. Squarespace is wonderful because you can kind of create something for maybe whatever, $10 to $20 a month. You can create beautiful work, and they have tremendous portfolios that allow for various images and detailed screens and so forth. Behance is one that I haven't really mentioned yet, but that's just another social media app that you definitely should check out. I know everybody talks about Dribbble. I feel like Behance allows you to create case studies it's almost like a baby version of WordPress, right? Like you can actually create blog posts with your content. So it allows for a lot of creativity. The last one I want you guys to check out is look into Webflow. Get started on Squarespace or WordPress, but in the future, if you really want to add some juice to your portfolio, check out Webflow. Webflow basically allows you to create a responsive website, and there's pretty much no limit to what you can create. And it does kind of require that you know a little bit of CSS, but it's essentially like if Photoshop was web enabled. It's kind of like, it looks kind of like Photoshop, but everything is laced with code and it's responsive. So it's kind of like drag and drop your own personal website. It's really outstanding. It's a really beautiful piece of work. And of course, the idea is all your various social media accounts point towards your website, right? That's the goal. The whole reason we're doing this is because we want people who are curious to end up on your website. So point them accordingly. What else we got here, right? The notion of the case study, we've talked about it a lot. Obviously, I talked about various creators and maybe all these different programs. Like there's a guy called Joe Natoli. Look up Joe Natoli on LinkedIn. Obviously, he's a writer, a speaker, and he's been a UX designer for like 30 years. But he actually has some courses on Udemy, stuff that you can buy for like $10 or $15 or whatever. But if you want to know how to build a terrific case study or portfolio website, check him out. He has a lot of affordable classes and just a great guy. So the notion of the case study, I just want to walk you guys through what I think are some of the, in my humble opinion, you are free to disagree, but I just want to show you a few versions of what I think are some tremendous case studies. So I'm going to start here with Focus Lab. Focus Lab is, I think they're based in Atlanta, Georgia, so down in the States, and just beautiful, beautiful. This is one of their cases, this outreach case, but like look at how they break down this case study. This is ridiculous how much work went into this case study. Like think about people who are like, oh, here's a screenshot, here's 3 screenshots and a paragraph, and these guys are going all in. It's incredible. Like just scrolling through this, and you're just like, these guys are geniuses. So on the left side here, I tried to break down the sections that I could find, and luckily they made it pretty darn easy, right? You can see the headings. So the challenge was the problem that the client came up with. The approach here was essentially the agreement they came up with the client. The agreement has nothing to do with money. It was essentially their big picture plan to reboot this brand. They talk about many things, obviously color, logo design, and then they get into things like the wireframes, and again, going into things like these components. And then eventually they went so far as to say, invite the client to their office and take them somewhere and take photos of them. So they have really beautiful high-res photos of the team leaders. It's really incredible work. So please check this guy out. If you want to know what your case studies could look like, this is the first example that I would give you of an amazing case study. I've actually shared this with my CEO, and he agrees. He was just saying, "Oh yeah, these are beautiful." Yes, they're pretty amazing. The next one, again, an individual who's just fantastic, Lucy Chi. You can find her on places like Twitter and obviously Behance. But Lucy Chi here, she did her own beautiful, beautiful work. Again, the notion here is that you want to share what your process looks like. That's the same thing as what the other guys are doing, right? And that's why you don't really focus too much on the final product. If I just showed them the final product of my work, the client didn't really learn very much from that. They're like, oh, good job. It looks beautiful and, great. But I don't actually know what you're going to do for us. So what she's doing is she's basically telling future clients, like, here's what I'm going to do if you hire me. They talk about things like iteration, right? Information architecture, the big picture stuff, right? And then you break down the actual wireframes, and then you start sharing your work with clients. And one of my favorite things is if I look at my mouse cursor here, it says here user testing. I know it almost looks like her user testing was at the very end, but what she's doing was she was actually testing the thing that she built. She was testing the new version that she made. And guess what? She got feedback. So what she do? She went back and iterated even more. And then finally, she ended up with this high fidelity. And then you often see this as a reflection. And I think this is more common for individual designers, where they are kind of saying, I think we did a terrific job, but in the future, I'd like to focus a little more on this, this, and this. So it's just kind of like a little bit of a retrospection on the project, and just kind of just saying to yourself, if we had changed the order of these two events, I think we could have done an even better job. But that's neither here nor there. Her work is stunning, and the process that she's showing is just, solid gold for any client that wants to hire her. And the last one, and I think I actually posted this about this woman, Karen Escarcha, because it was just a beautiful, just walking through and just seeing like, wow, this is stunning. She has so many examples where she's saying, we could have done this, we could have done this, but we looked at the numbers and we decided to go with that. And it's just like over and over, you can tell that she has this incredible process to her work. So again, a lot of the stuff on the left side is very similar. Like it's like, oh, what was the outcome? What was the big challenge? But the really interesting stuff, and the interesting stuff that you yourself might be missing, I don't know, maybe, is the kind of nitty gritty. If you see my mouse cursor here, I'm more sort of looking at the 2 and the 3. The 2 and the 3, these two screens, they include all of the work that they did testing their wireframes at this kind of black and white level, and deciding that, this didn't work when I showed it to 3 different users or 10 different users, or this was very confusing. People really didn't understand what to do here. So all of this stuff where you're bouncing it off the users and then iterating, bouncing it off them, and then progressing. That's exactly what people want to know. This is just beautiful work. And again, at a certain point here, she actually pivoted. So it means that the feedback from the users was very positive and some stuff was really negative, and it wasn't really what the design team expected. It made the designers think, oh, you want to use the app for this. And again, if you sort of like had to sit down with the client, they could, give the thumbs up. But, clients need to hear this stuff, right? A lot of times client thinks they know the future, and when they're wrong, sometimes they just they iterate, or they pivot, or they change moves. So just do your best to share this with the client or your internal project manager, and you can pivot, which is just beautiful work. Well done. And again, if you want to take a screenshot here, please do. Just take a screenshot of Focus Lab, Lucy Chi, and Karen Escarcha. Otherwise, just kind of follow them on LinkedIn and check out their work. There's so much to learn, and obviously, go for it. You do your best to mimic what they've done, but also just notice where the holes are in your own case studies and say, like, man, I never even thought about like asking clients about my wireframes. This is what people are doing, and it works. All right. So yeah, please take a screenshot, and I'm going to keep moving. All right. As I said, if you want more work, one of the things that we're talking about here is not just messing around on Twitter, but actually working and making money. So if you're looking for work, or you want to build up some referrals, that kind of things, obviously We Work Remotely is a fantastic website. This website, obviously it's remote, right? So it means that you could live in any country you want. You could be a designer, you can make money. It's incredible the amount of the amount of startups that are actively looking for brilliant designers. Please check it out. It is fantastic. They will email you lists of jobs on a weekly basis. It's fantastic. TopTal and Elance are kind of the same thing. Some are a little bit more tech heavy. I think Elance is just broadly general for any freelancer. Upwork, again, freelance work. Craigslist is one at the very bottom, because we don't expect Craigslist clients to be super rich, but who cares? If all you care about is building up a portfolio, then say, hey, look, I'll do it for $10 an hour, whatever, right? If it means that you're going to be creating interesting work, they'll be proud to share in a meeting or in a job interview. Do it. Do it for 3 months and see how it goes. The last thing that I'm going to mention here is when we hopefully get back to IRL events, networking. This is kind of an obvious one, because this was the sort of the birth of meetup.com, right? Is people would go to these events, and they would meet a whole bunch of people, and it was having fun. I guess all I would say is this is something that I personally struggle with. I don't think I'm a typical introvert, not necessarily, but if you go to a room full of strangers, yeah, you're going to feel a little bit anxious. It's normal to feel a little bit anxious around strangers. So one of the things that I've found is, if you could just give yourself a goal, and you can say, look, I'm going to stay there for 2 hours. If I talk to one person, that's great. I guess the only thing I wouldn't do is just try your best not to make assumptions about people. Try your best not to assume that, for example, I'm a designer and I go to a tech conference and it looks like it's full of front-end developers or back-end developers. I think the only thing I would say is, don't assume that everybody is disinterested in your content or your work. A lot of developers are fascinated by design. A lot of developers want to learn about design. Are likewise, a lot of designers are fascinated to learn about development. So try your best not to make assumptions about people, and give yourself a very easy goal. Like, I'm going to meet 2 people, or I'm going to meet 3 people, or something like that, and just try your best to meet really cool people, and try not to collect too many business cards. There's some people who they're like, let's trade business cards, and then they walk away, and it's like, well, it's not really a relationship, right? So yeah, just try to be a good one. Try to be a good one at these meetups when they come back. Of course, as we speak now, there are tons of live online meetups, and the same thing. You can get to work tonight, finding interesting people around your city or around your industry. So keep it going, and like I said here, treat it like the gym. Like, it is kind of work. Again, there's kind of social things that you're trying to overcome. It's completely normal. It's a little bit weird to go up to a complete stranger and like, hey, let's be friends. So just treat it like you're going to the gym, and just do a little bit of it every week. So good for you. All right, so we're about to wrap up here. I'm just kind of thinking about the big picture here. All right, we talked about at the very beginning, you had your, kind of your dream job. It's like, I'd love to be a UI designer, or I'd love to be a UX designer, or a UX engineer, or something like that. Your job is to think of what kind of content can I be publishing on a regular basis. This is probably the first thing I would sit down with a pen and pencil and say, like, what the heck can I do in my free time to actually create interesting content? These platforms are ridiculously huge and incredibly powerful, but if you can't create content, well, the platform is not really worth very much to you, right? So think about what kind of interesting content you can create. Remember the 100 days project. This is absolutely genius. It's solid gold. They're literally saying to you, do you want to learn how to make this app? Do you want to learn how to make cool content? Great. Here's the project. And you start going through, and then finally you share your content on your social media. This is solid gold. You just got to do the work. You see here, the goal here is to build a tribe. So maybe you could set up a little, Google Sheets, where every week you just start calculating, like, what kind of followers do I have in my various accounts? Fantastic. Like, over every week and week and week, I can start building up a network of people. That's fantastic. Your kind of social impact. And I said, ultimately, what you're doing is you're building a tribe, right? These people are essentially your fans. And remember, we said here, if anybody's negative, you know what to do. But ultimately, what you're doing is you're building up your fans. And some of those fans, they're going to know CEOs, or they're going to know project managers, or developers that want to work with you. And again, obviously, that's how you get hired. And again, it's sort of like the oldest story in the book, right? You meet somebody, you click, and before you know it, they're offering you a contract. It sounds cheesy, but as I said, people want to work with their friends. It's that simple, because trust matters. And if it's one or two people, or if it's 500 or 1,000 people, if somebody doesn't trust you, they're probably not going to remember you, because they might doubt you're being genuine and so forth. So try your best to kind of put yourself forward and meet amazing people. So I'm actually doing all right. If you guys have any questions at all, please hit me up. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, yeah, please follow me on LinkedIn if you want, because I'm going to try my best to retweet any cool job opportunities that I can find. Some of them are international, or some of them are, throughout the States. I'm based in Vancouver. The other thing I would say is, please check out, if I said, All About UX. I'm going to put a link. I'm going to put a link on the next meetup. But if you want to find us on YouTube, you can see videos of all the previous classes that we had. So it's a great way to kind of just, if you missed any of the classes, you can check some of the other stuff that we talked about. But the idea was, yeah, we wanted to have all the classes available on our YouTube channel. If you look up All About UX Design, you should find us with this kind of bright yellow icon. All right, so if you guys are having fun, great. Our next class next week is going to be all about client feedback. So it's essentially, if we use this class, this class was to help us find clients. The next classes, we're going to be talking about what you do when you present your work to a client, and maybe a little bit insight on how to restructure that kind of client designer relationship. All right. Just coming back here to Zoom. Whew. Oof. Good here. All right. Hey guys, it's Sunday. I hope you guys are having fun. That's it. I hope you guys have a wild week. And yeah, like I said, please look me up on LinkedIn if you want. I'm going to try to retweet jobs whenever I get them. And hopefully you guys are going to have a lot of fun working on your 100 days projects and start fleshing out your portfolio. All right. Take it easy, guys. Have a wild night. Take it here. Take care. Bye, guys.